Welcome to another Glasgow Wants to Know. First, I want to let you know that the council meeting, which is now meeting and which ordinarily would be televised at this time, will be televised tomorrow night. As far as our program is concerned, it deals with the recent legislature and its actions, and we are fortunate in having our state senator from this district, Richie Sanders, and our representative, Steve Nunn. Steve, since you have brought in some papers, I'll ask you to hold them up and explain what they are and why.
Okay, I'd like to explain what we've got here. We've got phone messages that we received during the legislative session. These messages here, and there's almost 400, are from just folks here in Barron County that called to offer their opinion and ideas about issues related to the legislative session. Now, these are just phone messages here. Then in this stack, which there's a couple of hundred, these are emails, and these are new types of communication in the last 4 years, really, that legislators have started to receive, and certainly the Electric Plant Board here in Glasgow is to be commended for the cutting-edge technology that we have, and certainly we receive a lot of email, and on a day we may receive 45 or 50 emails, and we may receive 50 to 100 phone calls, depending on the issues. But these are things that keep us in touch with our constituents and people around the state who are concerned about issues. And then, if you'll bear with me, I'll show you the budget. And this is a document here that is the governor's budget that we started with, and this is done in this session. This was done 5 times, and you can see the thickness of it. It is the executive branch budget, legislative budget, judicial budget, and the governor presented his budget twice this year because the legislators rejected the first budget that had the service tax, gas tax, telecommunications tax that was not ever voted on. And then after the governor presented his budget twice, the House presented a budget which was this thick. Then the Senate did their version of the budget, and then the Free Conference Committee did their version of the budget, which we finally did pass. So 5 times this document was printed. It takes 30 hours to print it, and I think it tells a little bit about the volumes and the task that we faced during that legislative session. But certainly the phone calls and the emails were very important to us in our deliberations.
Well, I think they're important also that they show citizens' interest.
Absolutely.
We need more of that. Richie, what committee assignment did you have?
I was the chairman of the Budget Committee in the Senate, and of course we were deeply involved in the handling of the budget. And at one point, I probably knew all that basically line by line because we went through it so many different times. But that was certainly a lot of responsibility. We have, of course, in Kentucky, we have to have a balanced budget, and our state revenues, we have about a $14 billion budget. But it was a big honor for me to have that position, to be able to chair the Appropriations and Revenue Committee in the Senate.
That is one of the most influential committees in the legislature, in each house.
It is. And, I think that our area is well represented because Steve serves on the Appropriations Revenue Committee over in the House, and that's where people want to be. They, members strive and lobby hard to be on the Budget Committee, and I think we did a good job trying to represent our area.
I want to congratulate you in becoming chairman of that committee so quickly after joining the Senate. I think you're deserving congratulations.
Thank you.
You served on the Copper Committee in the House, Steve. You serve on any more?
Yes, sir. Labor and Industry Committee, which we deal with the workers' compensation legislation, prevailing wage, and also Health and Welfare Committee, which deals with issues related to children's, women, public health, those types of issues during this session. And I would say just very quickly that I was real pleased that we made some real strong effort in funding programs for foster kids and kids that don't have parents, and we put some new money in there to try and get more programs and more foster parents and more adoptive parents, and also for poor children, which 1 out of 4 children in Kentucky are poor. In the Health and Welfare Committee and Appropriations and Revenue, we were able to add some $20 million for programs to help poor kids get dental care, which is so very important at those early ages to receive that kind of care.
You've already mentioned taxes. I think maybe that's a subject that we ought to discuss. In the beginning, as you've indicated, the governor asked for new taxes. The Senate and I think some members in the House also refused. And then we had this argument going on up there, no taxes. And finally, we ended up, as I understand it, in essence, a new tax, at least one. What was that, Senator?
Of course, I'm going to take the position that what we finally adopted was a revenue neutral budget. That the overall tax burden for the people of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, actually, if you looked at some documentation that we had supplied to us by Richie Ellen, who is the Secretary of Finance for the Governor's Office, is the overall tax burden actually decreased by $3 million over this biennium. We had to operate in the Senate under the premise, because we had several members that had signed no new tax pledges, that whatever we came up with had to be an offsetting revenue. What we were able to do in working with members of the House and with the executive branch, brought them in, and we were able to look at the unemployment insurance fund, because the economy in Kentucky has been doing so well. We were able to cut what employers pay by $75 million over the biennium. We did extend the long-distance sales tax for long-distance out-of-state phone calls to 6%. That is the same level that people currently pay for in-state long-distance phone calls. According to the analysis that was in the Lexington Herald-Leader, over 60% of that cost for long-distance out-of-state phone calls is paid by business. And that the average Kentuckian would only see about a 60-cent per month increase in their phone bill. We also did some things with the tobacco program, as far as we said that farmers would not have to pay any state income tax. That was my bill, Senate Bill 49, on the Phase 2 money that they received in December, and also the federal money that they just received those checks last week, that farmers would not have to pay any state income tax on that amount of money. And Representative Nunn and I also worked on a piece of legislation that basically benefited a company here in Glasgow, Pan Olston. There was they were being taxed. The Revenue Cabinet was going to tax them in a way that was basically going to drive them out of the state. And Representative Nunn and I met. We had several meetings with the Secretary of Revenue and other members, and were able to work out something to help that industry. So I'm going to take the position that actually we, in the end, passed for the overall tax burden of the people of Kentucky was a revenue neutral. budget.
I understand the position. Despite the tax question and so forth, you had community development projects costing $293 million. First, I think the public needs to know how most of those projects are going to be financed. I'll let either one that wants to answer it.
The majority of those projects will be financed with bonds. Some of those projects will be 7-year bonds. The projects that benefit the volunteer fire departments, for example, majority of those will be 7-year bonds. The other bonds issues will be 20-year bonds. The reason being is that is about the life expectancy of that project. But the majority of the projects will actually be financed with bonds.
There were a few, and I've forgotten, courthouses, some courthouses and so forth will be financed out of the general budget. Is that not correct?
Those courthouses, and of course I was pleased that my district, we had 2 new courthouse facilities, one in Metcalfe County, which is greatly needed, and then one in Simpson County. Those projects are authorized, and they are considered a necessary expenditure for the state of Kentucky. They are not determined, though, to come online until the next budget cycle. And the way courthouse facilities work, they do not show up on the state's bonded indebtedness, the amount of money that we have, but they show up on the county's bonded indebtedness. And what the state does is actually pay a use allowance, or basically a lease, that covers the cost of the bonded indebtedness for the counties.
Very similar to the way schools build new schools.
It is.
Very similar bond issue. Steve, of the various projects, community projects and so forth, what did Barron County get?
We fared very well, Uhel. Our biggest priority was our county building, which we've had a hole in the square now for a couple of years, and we really wanted to help our county offset the obligation for building a new county building. We were able to do that with $500,000. We got $300,000 for a new parking lot at Barren River State Park Marina, which was badly needed. $50,000 for Glasgow Parks, $200,000 for the City of Glasgow, $200,000 for Barron County government. We got $3 million for the new renovation of the Cave City Convention Center, which will include a farmer's market, which will fit in nicely with the tobacco settlement agricultural portion, which I hope we're able to touch on later. We got $100,000 for the Highland Games 2001 International Games, which will be coming a year from now, which should be a really big show for South Central Kentucky. We got $25,000 for Park City, $25,000 for Heistville, $200,000 to be spread amongst our 7 volunteer fire departments. Then we got $450,000 the first year and $550,000 for the family practice program at T.J. Sampson Community Hospital, which is in conjunction with the University of Louisville. We also got funding for our airport extension, which we're hoping that the governor, who vetoed part of the language, will see the great need that we have at our airport to finish up this runway, which the Federal Aviation Authority has been pushing us and raised the expense on. But in the whole scheme of things, my district fared 3rd best in all the state. we did well, and certainly Richie's help was essential for us to be as successful as we were.
Why did the governor, or what reason did the governor give for vetoing the money for the extension of the airport runway?
He actually vetoed all the projects that related to airports. He didn't just single out Glasgow. The reasoning being is that in my conversations with them that there was some confusion about how the money was going to be coming down from the federal government. They were concerned that there would be specific strings attached to it, and if that were the case, then projects wouldn't be able to be funded the way that we had passed them. There is some disagreement over that interpretation, but that will actually be something that will be decided in Washington, how that money, how the federal money for airports come down. The other part of the airport, this is the first time actually that we've had this plan to the way it's set up now to improve airport facilities all across the state. That money actually comes from the fuels that the major hubs in the state pay, the UPSs, the Delta, and there's also concern about exactly how much state money is going to be coming from those hubs. So that was the issue. Steve and I have both been in conversations with the administration, and we feel like that we're going to be able to get something hopefully done for the airport there at Glasgow.
Am I to understand that insofar as the actual amount of money appropriated for aviation, that remains the same? He didn't veto that.
That's right.
He merely vetoed certain or all the projects.
All the projects. Yes.
You mentioned the tobacco settlement a moment ago, and of course that's of great interest here in Barron County, and I notice where our farmers are entitled to more of it than any others in the state, and rightly so, because we grew more tobacco. But who wants to talk about that?
Well, Steve and I both were involved in that heavily. We actually were on the conference committee that signed off on the final document that passed, and we both had a lot of input in that. Barron County is to receive over $1 million locally. There will be I guess maybe it's already been named, an 8-person board that will make recommendations to the state on how that money will be spent. They can't themselves at the local level spend the money directly, but they make recommendations. It all has to have state approval. There will be 2 members from the FSA office, or from that board will pick 2 members. The Soil Conservation Board will pick 2 members, and the Extension Board will pick 2 members. Those 6 members that are picked from those groups will pick 2 young farmers under the age of 40, and it will take hopefully it will be people that will have vision and what we can do to try to do some new things in agriculture. I did notice, I guess a couple weeks ago, that there was a meeting at the extension agents, and there was a group here that were talking to farmers about raising shrimp in farm ponds, and I think they were even ready to contract out with farmers and offer them a price. There was other parts of the tobacco bill, and I defer to Steve to talk about those.
Well, I would just point out that $1 million that's going to be earmarked and spent in Barron County is for 2 years, and we were the only county in the state to receive that much money because we are the #1 tobacco producing and agricultural county in the state. But that $1 million coming to Barron County and the percentage to the other counties just represents 35% of the money. 65% of the money is going to be maintained by that group in Frankfurt, not bureaucrats, but individuals selected to a commission that will then try and develop strategies to utilize certain parts of the state for aquaculture and other issues. But it's a significant amount of money from the tobacco settlement, which in Kentucky we split it 3 ways: 50% going to agriculture, 25% going to early childhood development, which I think we ought to touch on in a minute, and then 25% going to health care. And in health care, of course, we spent the biggest portion of that creating a high-risk pool. But this money is supposed to come to Kentucky for 25 years, and we're hopeful that the tobacco company's solvency will remain such that the money that we are appropriating will sustain itself and we'll be able to implement these programs. But if the tobacco settlement and tobacco companies fold their tents, then a lot of what we've done will not succeed.
We also, Hill, part of that, we put $18 million into environmental cost share that directly goes out there to the soil conservation districts. That will help farmers if they need to add a lagoon or waterways. And that was something that we already had that infrastructure in place, and the feeling was that we needed to get that money directly to the farmers.
And the water lines.
And the water lines. We also put a pool of money of $50 million. Or we're going to put $5 million each year to sell bonds for $50 million for water and sewer lines in tobacco dependent communities. And that money has not been earmarked for any specific area or projects, but it does have the same language saying that those areas and counties that are most dependent on tobacco would get preference.
Well, now there's a water bill for the whole state.
There is a water bill for the whole state.
You want to briefly say what well, actually, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the purpose of that is to have water to everybody in the state by 2020? Is that the year?
That's 2020. That's hopefully that's something that we can do quicker than that, but that's the goal of that commission.
What is the prospect, if any, of the legislature enacting a law that allows the production of hemp?
Well, actually, we did authorize the University of Kentucky to do some study of that issue. I guess we'll have to wait and see what their recommendations and what they do with that study, how that goes.
It did not mention hemp by name, but crop diversification and alternatives was the language that was used. And of course, we had 4 former governors that came together, including my dad, that are strongly advocating hemp as an alternative to tobacco because there are so many uses for that particular crop. Unfortunately, we're going to study it for a little while before we try and make it an alternative crop for our farmers here in Kentucky.
Of course, y'all weren't around, but during the war, there was a tremendous amount of hemp grown in Kentucky. And of course, at that time, the government wanted it for ropes and things of that nature. But you got, as you know better than I, there's a lot of diverse sentiment about that right now. Now you mentioned the child welfare, Steve. Suppose you tell us about that.
Well, we are spending 25% of the tobacco settlement funds on early childhood development. Part of that goes for folic acid and an effort for potential women who may become pregnant to be taking these things to have more healthy babies. That's the first step in early childhood development is having women with the right type of condition for becoming pregnant to have healthy babies. And there are several of those type minerals and vitamins and things that go with that. but more of the stronger focus is on the 0 to 3 child in daycare and in teaching parents, especially first-time parents, how to be the best parent that they can be, how to raise their child appropriately, determining children that have eyesight problems and hearing problems early on, and getting them treated can help with their early learning and development. And then as they get into daycare, strengthening our daycare system here in the state, raising the standards for daycare, and providing some incentives for daycare centers to improve.
What administrative agency was designated in the bill, if any, to supervise that?
Well, the governor and the legislation created the Governor's Office for Early Childhood Development, and they have brought in Kim Townley, and there's a lot of interest in this issue, as there should be, because our future depends on our raising the bar for our children, getting them better able to go to school, better able to learn, and creating that economic sustainability by having a better educated workforce.
Now, while you're at it, since you've been involved in insurance legislation, since you've been in Frankfurt, what was done about insurance?
Well, there was 2 bills, one on workers' compensation insurance, which the governor had a proposal which would have raised the reimbursement to truly injured workers by about 25%. It would have increased compensability for black lung, pneumoconiosis, coal miners, and the House passed the governor's budget with even stronger language, and when it got to the Senate reduced the or eliminated the changes in coal miners' black lung awards, increased by about another 10% the awards to injured workers, and I think industry came out feeling pretty good about it. It may increase premiums by 10 to 12%, and we feel pretty good about that. Then in healthcare insurance, there was a bill passed that creates a high-risk pool, which it was felt like that will bring new insurance companies back into the state to try and restore competition in the marketplace, which has been sorely lacking in that arena. Hopefully that competition will help, if not drive down cost, it will hold the line on the cost of insurance. But it does sacrifice some issues related to what's called cherry picking, allowing insurance companies to only insure who they want to insure, so they can insure healthy people, and if you send in your application and you have a health condition, they can reject you straight away. So there is some give and take there.
Anything done about seeing that children would be insured regardless of the ability of the parents?
That's something that's, of course, happened at the federal level. We have the K-CHIP program that is getting up and running. That is one thing that Kentucky has kind of lagged behind. I think we were the 48th state to actually get that program going, but that does help children. I believe it's 200% of the poverty level to qualify for insurance.
The state contribute anything to that, or is that strictly federal?
There is a state contribution. I think it's 30% state and 70% federal.
I think it was $12 million that the state put up and got $55 million in federal dollars, or maybe $50 million, and we had $62 million that is total in that program, $12 million state and $50 million federal dollars.
Now you passed 2 constitutional amendments.
We didn't pass them. We're going to put them on the ballot.
Well, you passed putting them on the ballot.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's one reason I'm bringing it up. That's one issue that's got to be voted on this fall, and probably one of them is the most important issue that'll be on the ballot.
Railroad Commissioner, I'm surprised that you think that's so important.
Well, let's dismiss that one early. Why do you propose, or why did the legislature propose the amendment about the Railroad Commission?
Well, actually, Senator Ed Miller is a senator from Bourbon County, and Senator Miller felt very strongly about that bill, and that was the bill that usually in the past the House has gotten one piece of legislation, constitutional amendment, and the Senate has gotten another constitutional amendment, and the Senate decided to go with Senator Miller's bill on that.
Well, if my memory serves me correctly, there's been a constitutional amendment proposed on that once or twice before and voted down.
Not by itself.
Not by itself.
In the past, it had been tied with the Commissioner of Agriculture, I think, and the Secretary of State, and this time will be the first time that it has been by itself. Of course, there is, there really isn't a need for that now.
So it is important for people to vote on
Well,
that
it
as
does
well
reduce,
as the other one. Both amendments are important.
Yeah, it does reduce size of government.
Now, which one of you wants to tell the public out here what the legislative amendment, that is the amendment that's proposed and to be voted on about creating legislative sessions every year?
Well, that was sponsored by the House.
You're going to defer to Steve. I was wondering which one of you is going to pick that one up.
Well, it will be somewhat similar to the constitutional amendment that was voted on 2 years ago, which narrowly was defeated, which would allow the legislature to meet annually in a 45-day session. No, it's a 30-day session. Got too many numbers here to remember, but it's a 30-day session. But there is a caveat to this constitutional amendment as it relates to budget issues. It would take a supermajority or 2/3 vote to increase any revenue during that annual session, the short 30-day session. So it is different from the amendment that was voted on 2 years ago. However, the House version was not adopted, which would have limited the number of issues that could be addressed during that legislative session. But the Senate wanted to leave it as an open session and then put the supermajority vote to increase revenue in there as a protection against any tax increase during a legislative session in odd-numbered years.
That supermajority also applies to budget matters. You won't be able to go back in and do anything with the budget also unless there's a 2/3.
Well, that was my next question, is whether or not we're going to have an annual budget instead of a biannual budget.
No, I think the Senate's position is very strongly that we should continue doing a biannual budget. And I noticed that even in Washington, there's been a lot of debate and discussion about them looking at going at a biannual budget.
You for or against it?
Well, I voted for it to put it on the ballot. I think that a lot of times too that we pass laws that are filled in with regulations, and a lot of times the regulations go against what our intentions actually were when we passed the bill to make it law. With annual sessions, that does give the General Assembly checks on the regulations. So yeah, I would be in favor of that.
I'm in favor of it too, Uhel. For example, what is currently happening as it relates to our hospitals across the state. We've got hospitals in every county. Medicaid has come out and is cutting through regulation 3% of their Medicaid reimbursement to hospitals. Hospitals are the only group that pays the provider tax right now, and now they're getting hit by a 3% cut by Medicaid, when during this legislative session, Medicaid assured us that they weren't going to cut hospitals. And as soon as we go home, then they start off on another direction, knowing that we're not going to be back up there for 2 years to do anything about it. And I think that it will hold the executive branch more accountable as well.
Another thing, Hugh, there's only, I think there's only 2 other states that don't have some type of annual session every year.
Well, you touched on a very important subject in my judgment a while ago, and that is administrative regulations coming out that really don't comply with the statute. And if you have sessions every year, will that eliminate all of these committee meetings of members of the legislature?
No, I don't think that would eliminate. We only meet, usually the committees only meet, average meeting about once a month when we're not in session. And I think it is important that with all the changes that we see taking place, that members keep up to breast on their expertise, the committees that they serve on. I would not see, a reduction in the committee meetings.
Well,
except that we wouldn't meet committees whenever we were in session.
do the committees as they exist now check these administrative regulations?
We do, but we don't have any really. We don't have any power. We can put a letter on the administrative regulations, and that just gives our will that they not go forward. But the administration can basically go ahead and enact them, and you have to be. We have to be in session before we can do away with administrative regs. So really, we don't have. As Steve said earlier, we have very limited power on administrative regs when we're not in session.
Well, couldn't the legislature pass an act requiring a review of at least the committee of the legislature?
We do have currently we have a subcommittee on administrative regulation review, and that subcommittee does meet.
Yeah,
but their power is limited.
Well, my question is, why not give them the power?
Yeah, I think, Hugh, that there has been a court case that Brown versus LRC, and of course I'm not an attorney, that limited that power from the General Assembly. But that is something that we see all the time is administrative regs. There was a bill this time that would say that the bill sponsor, if I sponsored a bill and it became law, that I was to be notified by that agency whenever they were writing up the administrative regs. But I think that was vetoed by the governor.
Imagine that.
I'm familiar with the case you're talking about. They held that it was an invasion of the executive power and did not consist with the legal principle of equal branches of government. But I still think that based on that opinion, that there could be a legislative enactment that would curtail some of this stuff and still pass muster constitutionally. But again, I realize.
Well, Steve and I may want to seek your advice in helping us draft the bill.
Well, it needs to be done. There is no doubt about that, and I don't think there's a lawyer in the state that'll tell you otherwise.
Well, we're hopeful that this constitutional amendment, should it pass, will enable us to meet in a regular enough manner to offset the executive branch administrative regulations power.
You about to comment again?
No, that's
The Ten Commandments. A lot of talk, and finally a resolution passed. It was a resolution. A resolution passed about the Ten Commandments, permitting them to be displayed in public places, including schools and so forth. If I understand it, they included other historical documents. And of course, a similar law, that your enactment has not become law yet and won't until July, but a similar law has already been held unconstitutional by one of the district judges in Kentucky. Were you for or against it?
I voted in favor of the resolution. Of course, it was a joint resolution that you state correctly does have the force of law. I listened to what the attorneys had to say that I consider to be experts in that field, and one of them over in the House is Representative Johnny Turner. He's, I think, been involved in representing the Harlan County School Board in some of the action that's been going over there in the context that with other historical documents that it could be posted. But yes, I voted in favor of the bill. You voted in favor of it?
I voted in favor of the bill as well. You would like to think that it could have some positive effect, not only as a historical document with other historical documents, but as our society continues to evolve, which we're always changing, you look for ways to see things in a more positive light. I think there is a lot good about the Ten Commandments, and there's a lot good about other religions that are in our country as well. And almost all of our religions have come from other countries. So it's an opportunity for young people to see how our country is formed and how other countries view religion and spirituality.
I don't recall whether it passed or didn't, but there was a proposal to put them on the Capitol grounds.
That was actually part of the resolution that passed.
That's part of the resolution. I didn't remember whether it was separate or, but does that include all of the documents or just the Ten Commandments?
Actually, there was a monument that was given to the state during my dad's administration that is 7 or 8 foot tall, that has the Ten Commandments on it, and it was displayed for a brief time and then it was put away and has been stored ever since. And part of this resolution is to bring it out and set it at a position somewhere close to the floor clock.
I'd like to just make one other comment that this, of course, we had this debate about posting the Ten Commandments, but there's nothing to keep a student that wants to from having a book cover that has the Ten Commandments on it, or having a book marker that has the Ten Commandments on it. There's nothing that prohibits that. And then so often, we hear that prayer is no longer available in the school, in the classroom or in schools. They can have prayer, but it has to be student-initiated prayer. It has to be the students who start the prayer and lead the prayer. You can't have prayer where a teacher leads the prayer. And I just felt like that was something that probably should be pointed out, because I think people do get confused about that.
I think one of the odd things about the debate, Uhel, is that in both the House and Senate, every day before we start a legislative session, we have a prayer and say the Pledge to Allegiance. And for us to do that, making the laws for the state, and then not have the same equal opportunity, which I guess you have the equal opportunity, you just don't have it presented in the same manner, is somewhat of a discrepancy.
Well, the National Congress does the same thing.
Yes.
As I said, I think before we got on the air, there was a discussion about the bill. There was discussion in the community here about the bill that increased pensions for the members of the both houses. And based on what I was hearing and so forth, I don't think there was too much objection to the increase. All the talk I was hearing was that how in the world did that get passed in the last session of the legislature and everybody except the sponsor claiming they didn't know anything about it. Now that doesn't, I'll have to agree that based on, I'll have to agree with the comments that I heard. That doesn't speak well for any of you. Now how'd that happen?
Well, Steve, I'll try to comment some on it. When we get toward the end of the session, there is a lot of different conference committees that are meeting about different issues, and my focus was on the budget because I was chairman of the budget committee. Now, where I blame fault was that on the Senate side that bill ended up on the consent calendar, and the consent calendar, there's a whole list of bills on there, and they're all voted on at one time over in the Senate. The House doesn't have that, but the Senate has a consent calendar. And usually those are deemed to be non-controversial bills, or there couldn't be any no votes in committee, or that bill doesn't end up on the consent calendar. That bill ended up on the consent calendar, and every member that was present for that day of the session was recorded as voting aye for that bill, unless they went up beforehand and said that they wanted to be no on a certain bill. That's how it happened over on the Senate side.
Who drew up the consent calendar? Whose responsibility was that?
Well, actually, it's the floor leader's responsibility. So,
jointly or the one in majority?
The majority floor leader would be responsible for that, but I think there were some games played in the committee also, whereas the member David Karam, the minority member, made actually the motion for that bill in committee the way that I have read the news reports.
What happened in the House, Steve?
Well, unfortunately, I can't say that ignorance is bliss, but as you know, we came down to the last hour of the last day of the session. We're voting on several pieces of legislation, and for me, that was the most disappointing bill that was enacted. That provision was put in there, and I honestly believe that the sponsor of the bill in the House, Adrian Arnold, did not know that it had been added to the bill. And if you read the language, it's rather confusing the way it's written. But we had people in the House ask. He had two bills, one related to retirement and legislative, or I guess executive and legislative retirement, and he was asked if there was any increase in legislative retirement, and he said no. And then there was another bill which seemed relatively benign and unrelated to anything legislatively that this provision was put in, and I'm sorry to say that it's one of the faults of the legislative session that free conference committees can add provisions like that without the knowledge of members and without sufficient time for members and staff to spend the time to find out whether those kind of provisions are put in there. And I think it is a fallacy of the system. As much as we see the way this legislative session played out, the way our democracy works, sometimes it works in spite of the people that are in the democracy and voting on things. But in this instance, I think it shows one of the fallacies we have.
Another bill that was passed, which I think is going to create great controversy, was the liquor bill, allowing a vote for drinks at restaurants. Just what does it provide for, Senator?
Thank you. There is still some confusion, my understanding, on exactly what it does allow for. Does it allow for a precinct to have? There still has to be an election. It's not something that just comes into play. But whether what was passed allows for a precinct to decide whether they want to have that vote, wet dry vote, or whether it is a county-wide vote. And reading what the governor said, I guess the ABC, Alcohol, Beverage, and Control, will make regulations that will decide whether that will be by precinct or by county. Of course, it still takes getting the number of signatures on a petition of authorized voters, but whether that would be by precinct or by county is, I think, still has not been determined.
What about the city?
I think that same thing would apply, that regulation hasn't been determined whether it would be by whether it would be a city-wide or whether it would be a precinct-wide vote.
But are you saying that, and I've been asked this and I haven't seen the bill, but are you saying that in accordance with the bill, the city could have an election without the county participating?
I think that's
correct.
Yeah.
But once again, I think it's noteworthy to say only at restaurants, and those restaurants that serve 100 people or more.
Well, that's my purpose here, is to have it explained, because already I'm hearing about it.
But the regulations still haven't been determined exactly how that would. Because I noticed the governor was asking about it the other day, and he's saying that that's something that he give his opinion on what he thought. I think the regulations were, but ABC will make that determination.
And again, it's hard to tell what they'll determine. Gets back to what we were discussing a while ago about administrative regulations.
We did mention that we did lower the blood alcohol count to 0.08 for DUIs, and of course that had been something that had been brought up for a number of sessions, and actually this was the first time in 10 years that we'd done anything to strengthen the alcohol laws that we have on the book, but we did lower to the 0.08.
I take it both of you voted for the bill.
I did.
Now, there was, and I know it failed, but there was much talk and an effort to unionize the schools. What's the chance of the KEA finally getting that bill through the legislature? I noticed that the governor supported it this time. And I also, in fairness to both of you, without asking about it, I understand you both were against it.
We were against it. Well, I'll say I was against it I think certainly school teachers have certain rights that with tenure and some of the benefits of the state that it is something that shouldn't be precluded out and out. I think there are some trade-offs that should be considered. Prevailing wage certainly is an issue that drives up costs for school, but the issue of collective bargaining for state employees is one that has the potential for great abuse in certain situations.
I also was against the bill. I viewed it more with school teachers is that they have the local decision makers can make that decision if they want to. Now they can do that. The local school board, the city here they can make that determination now if they want to. I think a whole lot of it depends, actually on members of the General Assembly, how the elections go in the fall. A lot of times determines whether issues come forward or issues don't. And I'd say today that neither one of us could say for sure what's going to happen in the future. That will probably be determined by how the Senate changes seats, or if they change seats, and also what happens with the House, because you always have members who leave for various reasons, or sometimes the voters get sick and tired of them, and then other times members decide not to seek re-election.
And the governor's priorities, while he supported it, it wasn't one of his priorities like early childhood development or higher education or his budget. There, you've got to put these things in the order, and then you pick them off as you come to them. But while the governor supported it, I don't think that was one of his biggest priorities.
What about Stumbo's bottle bill?
Well, it's that's something that seems like it gains momentum every session. Of course, the Senate we didn't get the opportunity to vote on it. The House chose not to pass it over there. I think that we all recognize that we would like to do something about the garbage collections. I think is more the bigger issue that I hear members of the Senate talk about rather than the bottle bill. Not just pick out one industry. Is talk about ways that we can get everybody on garbage collection, or some incentive or something to that nature. But I think it would be ill-advised for Kentucky to have done the bottle bill and just single out one industry when we're border 7 other states.
Stumbo also raised an issue. I don't think he introduced the bill or anything about moving the primaries back to the old date, which used to be in August.
No, I don't think Stumbo did that.
It wasn't Stumbo?
No. David Williams, I believe, in the Senate.
Oh, it was David Williams that did that.
Yeah.
Somehow or other, I was under the impression that Stumbo. Well, did he introduce a bill to that effect?
Yeah, it actually passed the. I think Stumbo had a bill. I'm going with memory, and that's one of the things that we have over 2,000 bills that we have to deal with up there. I think Stumbo had a bill that moved the primary back, or it didn't interfere with Memorial Day. I believe that's right. Mm-hmm. And then when that came over from the House, the Senate put an amendment on it to move it to August, and then the bill died.
We've got about 30 seconds here, according to that clock. I certainly appreciate your coming. I'm sure the citizens appreciate your telling them what happened up there and why you did certain things. And I'm sure that both of you know that the public generally, I think, commends you, each one of you.
Well,
I hear more of that than you all would hear individually, but I think the public thinks both of you did a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate the opportunity to serve, appreciate hearing from people, because we do listen, and we're receptive to trying to do the right thing as best we can.
I also appreciate the opportunity to be up there. There were times this session when I wondered what I had a hold of being chairman of the budget committee, but I felt like that we did have a successful session and can help move Kentucky forward.
Thank both of you. Good night.